Let's break down our must-start defenses and streams for Week 7 of the fantasy season. These are the defenses that you may be able to pick up off the waiver wire or that you may already be rostering that you absolutely cannot bench if you want to dominate your league mates here in Week 7 of the season. All right, let's kick the video off with Thursday Night Football's matchup. We got the Pittsburgh Steelers facing the Cincinnati Bengals on the road. Coming off of a performance in Week 6 where they had 10 fantasy points, only allowed 9 total points to the Cleveland Browns. They had 6 sacks. They gave up 248 total yards. They now have 5 or more sacks in 3 straight games. So definitely if you guys are in a league where you get additional points for sacks, you want to be starting the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I will say they're 90% rostered, so they're just a must start. You're not going to be able to pick them up off of the waivers. And generally speaking, you guys know I stay away from Thursday Night Football matchups. I don't like short weeks for defenses. Generally speaking, weird things can happen. But I still like the Steelers' chances here on the road against the Bengals as they have had 10 or more fantasy points in 3 straight games. On the year so far, 14 sacks, 6 forced fumbles, 4 fumble recoveries, 5 interceptions. And ultimately, I know we have a little bit of a potential upgrade at the quarterback position with Joe Flacco when we look at the Cincinnati Bengals. He didn't have any turnovers this past week, and he did throw 2 touchdowns. So there's still a little bit up in the air here. Is this going to be a team we can now continue to stream and start defenses against, or do we need to fear Joe Flacco? But, I mean, I will say when you look at Flacco through his first 4 starts with the Browns, he had an interception in every single game and a total of 6 interceptions in that stretch, as well as 2 lost fumbles. Now, that was with the Browns, completely different team. He's with the Bengals now. He's got Jamar Chase. He's got T. Higgins. He's got Chase Brown. He's got some better weapons, but still a really poor offensive line for the Cincinnati Bengals. So I still believe the potential for upside in terms of turnovers is there. Here in Week 7 of the season, the Steelers have been very stout defensively the past couple weeks. So if you own them, don't overthink this one. They're still a must-start defense here in Week 7 of the season. All right, next up we have the New England Patriots on the road to face the Tennessee Titans, coming off of a Week 6 performance where they had just 5 fantasy points, gave up 19 points to Spencer Rattler and the New Orleans Saints. 2 sacks. They did have a forced fumble and a fumble recovery in that matchup, but still a bit underwhelming for what was a really popular streaming option this past week, and that's why you guys see them bumped up to 72% rostered. But another reason why they were heavily rostered across leagues was not just because of the potential against Spencer Rattler and the Saints in Week 6, but because of the upcoming schedule. They're going to get Cam Ward and the Tennessee Titans this week. And the following week at home, they're going to get Dylan Gabriel and the Cleveland Browns before facing Michael Penix and the Atlanta Falcons. And then getting, a tough matchup Week 10 against the Bucs, but then they get Justin Fields, Joe Flacco or Jake Browning or whoever, and then Jackson Dart. So they have a lot of nice opportunities over the next couple of weeks. This is a defense, if you guys own them, don't drop them. I know they were disappointing this past week, but they've still been pretty dang good on the year so far, and this is still a really good spot against the Tennessee Titans. We want to be starting whatever defense is playing the Tennessee Titans on a week-to-week basis. I mean, I was too nervous to recommend the Raiders this past week because they were going in to Week 6 as the defense 28 in fantasy. They had combined for 0 points in 3 straight weeks, and they had 17 fantasy points against Cam Ward this past week. So whoever is facing the Titans, we want to stream against them. And Cam Ward coming off a game where he did throw a touchdown, but he also had an interception and 2 lost fumbles. Since Week 3 of the season, he's had an interception in every single game. Since Week 1 of the season, he's had an interception or a fumble in every single game. So if you have the New England Patriots, don't move on. They're a must-start defense this week, and if they are out there on the waiver wire, there's a slim chance they are at 72% rostered. If they are, pick them up. They're a top streaming option here in Week 7 of the season. Except we have the Kansas City Chiefs, who will be at home this week facing the Las Vegas Raiders and Geno Smith. And I am recording this before before Sunday Night Football. I always have to record these before Sunday Night Football. But, I mean, I'm not expecting the Chiefs to have a very good day against the Detroit Lions, or a good night, I should say. I just not against this Lions offense, but maybe they'll surprise us. You never know. And quite frankly, this defense hasn't been fantastic on the year, averaging just 6 fantasy points per game. We look on the year so far, 13 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, 4 interceptions before Sunday Night Football against the Lions has been played. But I don't really care. They're playing Geno Smith. He looks absolutely abysmal right now. It is another quarterback that we want to be streaming against on a regular basis. Has an interception in every game since week 4 of the season. Has an interception in every game except for week 3 on the entirety of the season. And he has 3 games with 2 or more interceptions. Raiders on the road here. Tough place, tough environment to travel to in Arrowhead. There's going to be turnover potential when it comes to the Chiefs defense here in week 7 of the season. And they're much lowly rostered because they haven't been great this year, first of all, but also they're playing a very, very good offense on Sunday Night Football against the Lions. So not a lot of teams want to hold on to them when they're not going to start them against an offense like that. So it's one of my favorite streaming options of the week, much lower rostered than the teams we've gone over so far. The Chiefs are out there and available, top streaming option as we approach week 7. All right, next up we have the Denver Broncos, who will be at home this week hosting the New York Football Giants, coming off of a performance where they had 13 fantasy points. They didn't do a whole lot in London against the Jets, but they didn't mess up either. They only allowed 9 total points, and they gave up just 82 total yards, and they had 9 sacks. In the past 2 weeks, they've had 6 or more sacks. Since week 3, they've had 5 or more sacks in every game except for 1. And on the season, they've had 5 or more sacks in every game except for 2. So once again, a really strong defense. If you're in a league that gets bonus points for sacks, they only have 3 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, and 1 interception on the year. I mean, last year, this unit was a turnover machine. This year has kind of been stalled in that area, but that could change this week against a rookie quarterback in Jackson Dart. And I know that the Broncos are sitting at 95% rostered. Usually I won't go over teams that are this highly rostered, but with all the success that the Giants had this past week against a good defense like the Eagles, I think some people are going to be a little bit too afraid to start the Broncos or going to look elsewhere. I say that you should absolutely start the Broncos defense this week. I like Jackson Dart. I like Cam Scatterbo. I'm all in for all the fun that the Giants are showing us with these rookies and kind of the upside they're bringing to the table right now. But still, this is a really tough area to travel to, tough environment to play in there in Denver. And this is still a really good defense at the end of the day. So I don't particularly love the Giants' offensive starters in this matchup. Plus, technically speaking, Jackson Dart is going into the week questionable. I think he's going to clear concussion protocol, but maybe, just maybe, we get a little bit of Russell Wilson. Although that could be a revenge game narrative. Nonetheless, this is still a good matchup. Jackson Dart, still has 2 interceptions and 2 fumbles over the last 3 weeks. 1 lost fumble in that stretch. So there's still some turnover potential. And once again, this is one of the best defenses in the league. Don't overthink this one. Don't move along if you own the Denver Broncos. They're still a must-start defense here in week 7. All right, next up, we have the Green Bay Packers, a defense. And I won't lie, I'm starting to worry a little bit about. They had just 1 fantasy point in week 6. They didn't really do anything in this game. They had 1 sack and they allowed 18 total points, 268 total yards, and that was it against Joe Flacco and company. And I thought that this would still be a good streaming area, regardless of if it was Flacco or Browning that we saw in week 6. And the Packers defense just didn't really show up this past week, but we have to keep them on the streaming radar as we approach the week, as they're going to face Jacoby Brissett and company. So I know they shot up really high in roster percentage coming off of a bye week where they were a little bit lowly rostered going into last week's waiver period. Now they sit at 88% rostered. And let's face it, Jacoby Brissett, let's give him some flowers here. Only threw 1 interception, still threw 2 passing touchdowns and over 320 passing yards, exactly 320 passing yards against a good Colts defense, but it still feels like there's turnover potential here. Plus, we might get Kyler Murray at quarterback, so we don't even know that Jacoby Brissett's going to be the starter this week. I just think ultimately this is still a good spot for the Packers defense, so they kind of fall in line with some of the other highly rostered defense that we've talked about today. Don't be afraid here. I still think that they are a good start in week 7. Don't overreact. If there's maybe a streaming option that you feel like has more upside, you can move along here, but I still think for a majority of you guys, the Packers are going to give you a very safe floor in terms of week week 7 fantasy points. All right, last but not least, let's talk about the Seattle Seahawks coming off of a day where they had 11 fantasy points against the Jaguars in week 6. Once again, didn't do a whole lot here. They had a whopping 7 sacks, gave up 273 total yards and just 12 total points to the Jacksonville Jaguars, but no turnovers. We're starting to see that turnover number kind of slow down here, as through the first 4 games of the season, they had a whopping 7 interceptions. They've had 0 interceptions in the last 2 weeks. But I still think on a week-to-week basis, this is a defense that you guys just really have to consider. They've been really, really good on the year as a whole. They're going to have a nice opportunity on Monday Night Football against CJ Stroud and company. Stroud, just 3 interceptions on the year, but we've seen some really low offensive production out of the Texans and out of CJ Stroud. Outside of week 5, where they're playing arguably the worst defense in the league and the Baltimore Ravens that's completely decimated by injuries, we really haven't seen a lot of offensive output from the Texans. So I still think that this is a good spot. It's a home game for the Seahawks. They're coming off of a nice 11 fantasy point day. They said around 51% rostered, so for a lot of you guys, you may be able to pick them up and stream them. A little bit lower rostered overall, so I still think that this is a team that is a really safe floor, can be a very strong streaming candidate here in week 7 of the season. Okay, very quickly here, let's run through the rest of the schedule, so in case you guys are wondering why a team wasn't on the list or whatever, we can just kind of get some clarification here. Let's start with the Rams and the Jaguars. Once again, for the majority of these matchups, Thursday Night Football, overseas games, I try to stay away from them unless it's a matchup like the Broncos and Jets this past week. And the Rams are coming off of a huge day, 19 fantasy points, but they were playing Cooper Rush and the Ravens and Snoop Huntley. Not going to be the same situation this week. I still think that they are a solid start. I think that the Jaguars could be a solid start as well, as they've had a really nice defensive year overall, although they're coming off of a poor performance against the Seahawks. But overall, I just don't like these London matchups or overseas matchups, so I'm going to try and stay away from this Rams-Jaguars game, but there is potential here. The Eagles are the other team that I do really want to bring up. They're going to be facing the Vikings this week, but they've combined for just 3 fantasy points over the last 2 weeks, so I'm a little bit worried about them, and they sit at 97% roster. They're like the most rostered defense, so I don't really bring them up a lot. I know we went over highly rostered teams today, but they do have a really nice opportunity against Carson Wentz and company. Maybe a revenge game. Maybe we see JJ McCarthy as Carson Wentz is dealing with that shoulder injury. But if it is Carson Wentz, he has 2 interceptions and a fumble in his first 3 starts with the Vikings. So there is definitely turnover potential there. I still think that the Eagles are a good enough start here in week 7 of the season. But once again, defense has been a little bit shaky. Quinshawn Mitchell is banged up, so I don't know how much I love them. All right, these are the 3 matchups that I also really want to mention. Panthers, Jets. Dolphins, Browns, Saints, Bears, all in the early window on Sunday. I think one of these teams is going to have a nice day, but I don't trust any of these defenses. The Panthers will have a nice opportunity against the Jets, but the Panthers are coming off of a 0 fantasy point day. The Jets will probably have a nice opportunity against Bryce Young. Justin Fields, good overall potential here. But the Jets, although they showed up in week 6, we're going into week 6 as a bottom 3 unit in fantasy points scored in terms of defensive special teams. So there might be something there, but I just really don't want to risk it. Then we have the Dolphins, Browns. Once again, I mean, it's a good opportunity against Dylan Gabriel, but the Dolphins are coming off a day where they had just 4 fantasy points. They've only hit double digits once on the entirety of the season in terms of fantasy points scored. So I just don't love it. The Browns maybe against Tua, but once again, they had 1 fantasy point this past week. Then we got the Saints and the Bears. I don't trust either of these defenses whatsoever, but it feels like there's some potential opportunity, especially maybe for the Bears defense against the Saints. But I am not ever going to recommend starting this Bears defense. They have been so bad this year. But those are the 3 matchups where I feel like something could get wonky. We could see a high-scoring defensive special teams unit, but I just can't recommend one of those teams for you guys. Colts, Chargers, next on the list here. I do like this Colts defense a lot, but they're on the road. I know the Chargers have had their issues. They have offensive line issues. When Johnson missed this past week, Omarion Hampton, is going to miss an extended amount of time, all that stuff. But still, I just don't know that I love the Colts on the road here. But bear in mind, the Colts play the Tennessee Titans in week 8. They are a team worth picking up just to save for week 8, if nothing else. Then we move along here. Commanders, Cowboys, nothing there from a defensive standpoint for me. Falcons, Niners, I don't trust either of these units, but maybe the Niners at home can put together something. They've just started to look a lot weaker defensively than what we saw earlier in the season. So don't love them, but maybe against Michael Penix at home, they have a nice opportunity. Bucks, Lions, no thank you. I know both these teams have some injuries, but I'm expecting full-on offense in that matchup. So that wraps it up. There's the rest of the schedule and any other team that you guys may be considering here in week 7 of the season. And there you guys have it. There are my must-start defenses and streams as we approach week 7 of the fantasy season. Don't forget, guys, I'm answering all fantasy football questions in the comment section down below. So if you guys need anything whatsoever, be sure to drop me a comment. I'll answer as many as I can as the week progresses. And while you guys are down there, it does me a huge favor. Helps out the channel tremendously if you guys hit that subscribe button and that like button on the way out. And when the videos and playlists pop up on the screen, make sure you guys are checking out all the content that we have here on the channel for week 7, because we're going to have everything you could possibly need to dominate this week and every week of the fantasy season. And with that, I'll say thank you guys so much for watching and or listening. And remember, you saw it here on The Catch.